I've got a couple of challenges to throw at you a little bit later on, which should be interesting.
So everyone, welcome to the Sunday Roast. Great to have you all back once again. We're here with two wonderful guests. Zoe, would you like to introduce yourself?
Thanks, Max. Yeah, hi everybody. My name is Zoe Gardner. I'm a migrants' rights activist based in London. I work for a small charity. It's actually a European network charity that assists stateless people and campaigns for the rights of stateless refugees and migrants across the whole of Europe. And I also shout about the government a lot on Twitter.
We saw today.
We want to hear lots of shouting. Mila, can you tell us about yourself?
Hi, thank you for having me today. So I'm Mila, I'm originally from Serbia. I'm a student at Queen Mary University and I study history and politics and international relations. But besides that, I do quite a lot of things from YouTube, from activism, non-governmental organizations, refugees, climate change, and so on and so on. So yeah, I'm everything everywhere. And many people know me as a YouTuber. Many people know me as a politician. Many people know me as their neighbor. So yeah, everything at once, I guess.
Fantastic. Alex, can you tell us a little bit about yourself for those who may be new to the channel?
Hi, I'm Alex, also known as Political X. I run my own YouTube channel. I'm a historian and I also teach politics. Over to you, Max. Tell us all about yourself. Sensational co-host.
Well, so my name is Max. I run the Robespierre channel, talk about British politics and in particular Brexit, and take a few digs at the Tories whenever I can. Alex, what is our lineup for today? What are we going to talk about?
All hail the lava lamp, Max.
Oh yes, all hail the lava lamp.
All hail.
Going to actually start off on climate change. That's what we're really going to be talking about today. All the stuff that's been going on across the board. It's been really interesting as well because we've got Brazil and we've got the election coming up with Bolsonaro versus Lula. And that seems to be one core element of that is pretty much the Amazon rainforest. If it sticks with Bolsonaro, it's just going to continue to be chopped down. And if it goes back to Lula, he put in some of the strongest environmental protection acts when he was last in power. So Lula was president, and then he got nicked, and then he got released from jail, and now he's able to run again against Bolsonaro, which is an interesting thing of what you do with ex-presidents that break the law, America. And then we've got to talk about the IRA bill, which is a terrible name if you're if you're.
Doesn't sound great.
It's not good. Inflation Reduction Act is the anagram, which is a fascinating climate-changing bill, and essentially it looks to incentivize people to go in an environmentally friendly direction, whether it's electric cars, nuclear power, or coming up with solar and wind farms. It almost feels like we're on the tip of something here, which way the world is going to go. Except, of course, for the UK, who's decided that fracking's great. I found a couple of really interesting articles from people who have run and worked with fracking companies who say that it's an absolute waste of time to frack. That's quite a sentence. It's a waste of time to frack. I'm going to say it again. A waste of time to frack in the UK. I don't think there's much to it, but it doesn't seem that the Tories have any policy towards green energy, towards a green future. They seem to be talking a little bit about
the green levy on. They scrapped the green levy as the first. Remember during the way back, it seems like such a long time ago now, when she was running to be leader, although it was always a done deal. And her one response to the energy crisis and the cost of our bills was to scrap the green levy on bills, which obviously was going to make no significant difference at all to any of what we really had to pay. But obviously the fact that that was her first target, I think it says a lot about what we need to look out for from her. And obviously the fracking stuff, I mean, do we need to look out for anything? Is she going to be gone by Christmas? Hopefully. But yeah, she very clearly does not have environmental protections at the top of her agenda.
They're very much neoliberal in their view. It's strip everything down, deregulate everything. Who gives a crap about workers' rights? Who gives a crap about environmental standards? Just make it all private and it'll be fine and fantastic.
It didn't used to be this way at all. Come on, crack those atoms! You, turn out those pockets! victims. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 of them. Take him away.
You can't treat the working man this way. One day we'll form a union and get the fair and equitable treatment we deserve. Then we'll go too far and get corrupt and shiftless.
If only we had listened to that boy instead of walling him up in the abandoned coke oven.
I gotta admit, I've been back for like the whole of a week now, and I am fully back into it. But it's been fascinating. It's been genuinely fun this last week in politics in the UK. Like, if you were following it minute by minute, usually you're following just like disaster to horrifying announcements to latest bullshit lies. And this last week, we've just been following like the crumbling and infighting of the Tory party. It has been a real laugh.
But such news are not just in the UK. As an international student here and someone who's been living here for almost 3 years now, I guess that even when I read Serbian news or the news from the region, it's just crap, or it's some kind of new revolution. It's always something happening and going on, but it's never anything that we should see, I guess. So for example, today, as you've been saying, everything in the news, as you just, Zoe said, you can avoid it, then catch up after a week and then be like, oh my God, what did I just read? Or, oh my God, what is just happening right now in the world? You said in the UK, but I'm saying in the world, in the region, in Europe, in America, everywhere. So I think that whoever reads news is just like, oh my God, I have a headache, right? So it's like, it's not only in the UK, it's everywhere. It's something that is around us.
That's so true. The 24-hour news culture. And also like, yeah, following what's going on in so many different countries as well. And obviously in other countries, they're doing the same. So like, we're going to talk about the US and Brazil, you know, there's what's going on in Iran that was like blowing my mind this morning. Like when you start thinking about it, you want to like cry or do something, you know, and it can get super overwhelming. And obviously we can't do something about most of these things, let alone some of them we can and we should. But most of these things you can't impact, and you hear about them and hear about them and hear about them on this 24-hour cycle. I don't think it's really good for us, actually.
It's like, have you heard what's happening, for example, as I'm from Serbia, but that doesn't really matter. What's happening in Serbia with women's rights? No, that's why, like, that is because everything else is put into news, but not what's happening in the smaller countries. It's usually like, oh, this happening there, this UK, US, biggest things, biggest news, making headlines and so on. But like, women in Serbia and Belgrade have been fighting for their rights and their freedom and so on for such a long time. And the rapists are in the streets who've committed several offenses and nobody's doing anything. Even news, like there is a one like company in Serbia that did an interview with the rapist.
What?
They did, and they said exclusive interview rapist. Yeah, and you don't know that because it's not in BBC or CNN or something like that. It's just like the local things that's happening. But it's such a big thing, and it is connected with Iran thing. It is connected with everything.
That's connected with the, you know, misogyny and the rape culture that we have around the world. But
exactly,
no, that's absolutely crazy. And yeah, you're right. You don't hear about this stuff unless you have someone you know who can tell you about it.
I was just going to say that's part of the point of why we do this show. We are actively going out there and trying to find different people from different backgrounds to come on here and bring stuff up like this, because you're absolutely right. We don't hear about this. You hardly heard anything. I mean, Max, you just had a right winger whose first frigging meeting was in Mussolini's new, the town at the time was brand new and created by Mussolini, Latina, I think it was.
Yeah.
And she brought out Mussolini's granddaughter. And, you know, that didn't make news, which is incredible in itself, because it's like Brits went over to Italy to get him out and died in the streets of Italy to get him out. And there's someone ringing out the granddaughter in a Mussolini-developed town. What are your thoughts on all this, Max?
I'm really fascinated about what Mila has said about what's happening in Serbia. Like, well, what is the reaction from the general public towards this? You know, the idea that you would interview the rapist. Like, what is the feeling of ordinary people? Are they disgusted? Are many people fascinated by this? Is it like a serial killer sort of, the way people are attracted to this strange, they have this strange approach to crime? What is the general feeling in Serbia towards this type of behavior?
So I'll just give you
the media, sorry.
Yeah, I'll just give you a quick recap of the interview. It's like him talking about how he is raping people and how he went to the jail for two times for about 15 years, I think. And he's been out only for a couple of days, and they interviewed him, super exclusive interview with, I think they call him super serial rapist. And he's been telling the person who interviewed him, like, if I want to like rape you, I will, you can't resist, or I'll hurt you. And that was on the news. So people around Belgrade, around Serbia, gathered up in front of the company, and they literally railed them at all. So there's been, I think, 2 protests so far, and police was actually standing with the informer. That's the company's name, so that's the newspaper's name, and they were standing there protecting the company but not protecting women in Serbia. So if you'd call and say, oh, my husband's harassing me, or my boyfriend's doing this to me or that, they'll just say, oh, that's not our problem, as that's like private matter. Like, as a student, I think I've been learning that in my politics lesson of like women back in 19th century, or even like 20 or 30, 50 years ago, when they call up police and they say, oh, my husband been treating me this or that, they say, oh, that's a private matter. It's the exact same situation in like Serbia right now, and nobody's talking about it outside of the region, outside of the Balkans, as it's not their matter, as there are more greater things to talk about. So as per your question, people have been disgusted, as you said. They want to take down the newspaper. They want to take down Informer, as that's not really ethical to do. But as somebody said, what is ethical in news nowadays? Nothing, almost nothing. So can you really do something about it? Let's hope we can. So they've been doing it. They've been doing the protests so far, as I said, 2 times, but I think they're not going to stop there. So until he's arrested again, as he said in the news, oh, listen, if I want to rape you, I will, which is mad, which is crazy. So I heard that and I got disgusted. I got scared. If I was back home right now, I would be scared for my life to walk alone. So even here in London, I go home running back because I don't know who I will encounter, honestly.
Because how are you all feeling about living in London? I've even recently had 3 experiences over the past year that are not on that level, but still serious and a big concern. How are you both, like, I'm going to throw this over to Zoe. How are you finding London at the moment? I appreciate you've only just come back, but you've been here long enough to see the changes.
Yeah, I think I think like it's objectively terrifying. I mean, that story like from Serbia is horrific, and I send my solidarity and my love to the women in Serbia who are going through that. But like the reality is here that while there's a greater veneer of respectability maybe on the discourse that we have, we've seen figures like rape and sexual assault and domestic violence does not get prosecuted, does not get, we are not protected by the police. So I think that there is that sort of like that element of terror, but at the same time, like, I don't want to sound like in any way like I'm minimizing it. Just London is my home, and I have to, in order to like feel mentally well here, I have to like just be like, no, I have to be able to walk around. I have to be able to, like, obviously I don't go somewhere dangerous or something, but I have to be able to walk around at night, and that means on my own, and that means walk home. And yes, I'm always aware. But I'm aware in the middle of the day. Some guy walks behind me who doesn't look okay. Like, women have to be on this constant level of alert to a degree as well. But like, I I feel safer among my community and walking down the street and knowing that like the vast majority of people won't harm me, then I feel protected by the authorities, the state or the police at all.
So you said I'm not going into like dangerous zones. So what is that? How do we know where to go and where not to go? Because dangerous zone can be anywhere or
Of course,
nowhere.
Yeah.
So
anywhere can be
that's
dangerous.
a great question.
Yeah, absolutely. But like, you know, and again, I'm trying to like not sound like a dick here, but like these things help me to feel better, to remind myself the statistics. Actually, the least safe place for a woman in terms of this kind of abuse and danger is in her own home, because the most likely person to attack you and to harm you is your family members or people close to you or friends of your family. So yeah, in a sense, nowhere is safe. So at the same time, that kind of gives me this feeling of like, well, I've got to like, you know, believe that when I walk down the street, I own that place and this somewhere where I can walk and I can be safe. And like, if that's not the case one day, that kind of is what it is. But if I live like, if like a lot of my friends stopped walking home after the Sarah Everard murder that happened, and I can totally understand moderating your behavior. I mean, we were all terrified and horrified by what happened there. But I couldn't make myself change my behavior because I felt like I could change so much behavior if I start like rationalizing, not doing things that could be harmful to me or not putting myself in any kind of risk, end up not living at all. So I think we need to like, I find that it helps me to turn that into like anger and activism rather than fear and trying to protect myself, which I realistically know that I actually can't do.
No, I just want to say, like, instead of focusing on the women, we should be focusing on society. We should be focusing on, for example, where are the police? Why are there not services available? And then we go up the scale where we see that, well, it seems to be the Tories or whoever's in charge is cutting these services. So, you know, if there are no services available, then people will of course feel more afraid, and it's a very difficult balance to, you know, should I stay at home because I'm afraid to go out, but I don't want them to dictate how I live. So it's a like we're
There's
seeing more and more
thing.
Sorry, go on.
Sorry, just to like about that, like, so when I was in Athens, where I've been until recently, I was staying in this part of town, Exarchia, which some of you may have heard of. It's basically like a very super left-wing radical part of the city, and it's a few blocks where like every street is completely covered in graffiti, and a lot of the graffiti says, you know, things like "dead men can't rape" and "my dress is not a yes," and he calls out the cops for being murderers, and you know, and these are kind of violent things that refer to that harm. But when I'm walking down a street where the walls are literally shouting things that are on my side, it made me feel so protected, like literally like the buildings were people around me who would protect me, even though that's obviously stupid. But like here it feels so much like more like I'm walking down the street and I don't know what the vibe of this neighborhood is, right? Like I know my own neighborhood, but like to have it painted on the street what the people who live there believe in is kind of something super powerful about that neighborhood that I love there.
I'm so sorry that both of you have been having to experience this in London. Like, the heart goes out of both of you. It sucks. And it's absolutely correct. You don't know. You could turn down any alleyway. Bringing it back to myself a little bit, but I've literally had 3 incidents that have happened 9 a.m., middle of the Sunday, and lunchtime, midweek in London. I'm 6'4", which doesn't come across on the camera. Everyone said, like, you look smaller for some reason. When they met me in person. I'm 6'4". I'm not small in stature by any stretch of the imagination. I've had 3 separate incidents involving myself. And I'm sort of like, if that's what I'm
that must
going
make
through.
it really hard to keep going out.
So I lived in Brazil, and I bring this up a lot. And you could have a gun put to your head at pretty much any point during the day. And there's an element, because I live like that, there's an element of like, you almost got used to it. And so coming back to London, you sort of de-escalate a little bit. And then it's escalated over the last few years to the point where I'm like, this is on a par with what I was experiencing in Brazil. But the other interesting thing is I'm now abroad, as you pointed out. I'm in a city that is like just safe. It's like 2 a.m. You can walk outside and no one's going to say diddly squat to you. But I'm still realizing I'm holding on to like my keys or my bag or my satchel just as if I was in London, because the effect that it's actually had on your mentality. But the point being, going back to both of you, I'm 6'4". In theory, I should be in a relatively safe zone for being of that height, nonetheless everything else. So when you then go, right, well, a different height, which is more likely to be the case with a different gender, you're sort of like, you're more likely to be targeted. So if it's not safe for me, how is it therefore safe for anyone else, to be honest, within the city? How have you found it in Serbia? Has it gotten worse over the years, or does it seem to be getting better as a result of the reaction that's taken place?
So it's like I've been in London for less than a month now, and I live in East London. So if we go back to history, East London was what it was, okay? I'm not going to give a history lesson now. Alex, you can do that for me. But it's like, when I walk down the streets, I do feel safe when I don't see anyone. But when somebody encounters me, I will be skeptical. So even if they're going my way or just passing by, I will shit my pants, to be sorry for my language. Yeah. But when I'm back at home, actually, before everything in Belgrade started, I lived in the city center. And even if I went back home at 12, midnight, middle day, morning, 5 a.m., I would feel safe. It's like, if people are around at that time, they would know that girls or anyone, even men on the streets, don't want to be encountered at 5 a.m. or if you don't know them, even in the middle of the day. So they will mind their own business. And yeah, I've experienced a lot of people honking at me while I walk down the street, but nobody would come up to me and say anything, or, even worse. But it's like, when I'm here, I get creeps. I don't know why. Maybe because I'm new here. I don't know the area yet. I don't know the city. I don't know the people. But if I was at home, as I said just now, like today, or like when the rapist thing happened, I wouldn't feel safe, honestly, because it raised my awareness that he's not the only rapist in the world. That's the thing. Or he's not the only one who harasses people. There are many more people, but we shouldn't actually live in, that's my theory, we shouldn't live in fear. As you, Zoe, said, like, I'm debating whether I should stay at home or go out with my friends, but then I have to think whether I'll get home by 10 p.m., whether I should get a taxi or Uber, so I should be safe. But can I be safe in an Uber? Because the rapist in Belgrade is working as a taxi person. So how can I get into a cab and then feel safe? So it's the constant thinking of, oh, what will happen if I do this? What will happen if I do that? Anywhere. So when this comes to our mind, it's like, it doesn't matter if I live in London or Oxford or Paris or anywhere else in the world, even the safest city. I don't know which one is on the list right now, but I wouldn't feel safe. That's what I'm saying.
I think there's a huge problem that men have, is that they don't understand the routine that women have to go through in their life, in their daily life. Like, okay, I can go to that, I can park my car here because I know it's near a light, or it's near where I need to go. I don't know, you can maybe Alex, it's a little bit different, maybe where you live in London, but like you were asking me about it in Italy. So I used to live in Dublin, and I remember before I moved over, there was a story of somebody who had been murdered, put in a suitcase and dumped in the river. And then I moved to this little town here, where you can go out at midnight and you'll see families. Like, there isn't a police station in this town. It's not because it's really small, but because there's no crime. Like, I remember some years ago, my wife and I we went walking, and we couldn't sleep. We went out for a walk with the dogs, and we walked past a house, and the door was open. And we were afraid that maybe somebody was inside, they had fallen, or they had a problem. So we called the police. It took about 15 minutes for the police to arrive, because they had to come from another town. And then they interrogated us. What are you doing out at this time of night or whatever? But at the end, that there was nothing. It was just somebody had abandoned the building and left the door open, or were moving and had left the door open. But I was really shocked how you see parents, families with little children walking around in the center of the town at midnight because the bars close at about 2 a.m. And no one's concerned, no one's worried. Of course, if you go to a city like Milan or Rome, maybe the situation is a little bit different. But I think there's also this: if you're familiar with the area, you'll feel more safe. You could go into a very safe area, but if you don't know it, you're going to be more concerned. But the core is how many men don't really understand what women have to go through just in their daily life about, you know, what we'd see as small things, but it's just to stay safe.
What would you say is a number one thing that you would like to see men do, or like to see society do, that would change and make your lives a little bit better?
I think that education from early age to everyone, even boys and girls, is crucial. But then having someone that, I mean, not someone, I mean, as an authority that will protect me. If I go to the police and say, listen, this man is harassing me, or this woman is harassing me, I want them to believe me. I want them to to do something and to take a chance to help me or anyone else. So I would say that education is the number one thing.
There's an imbalance here, right? So women are obviously the victims of this, but men are also the victims of a macho society where, you know, where they're taught violence as opposed to how to deal with their emotions and so on, right? So I want to give a more sensitive answer than that. And I do think that men lack the spaces to actually talk through emotions and do that in a way where that it's not weird. You know, women have friends that they can tell anything to, many, generally speaking, and men usually they probably have one close female partner who they rely on for all their emotional needs, and they don't have, I'm generalizing, right? But other men that they can go to and talk to about this kind of deep emotional and identity level kind of issue. And I think that it would really, really help us as a society if we basically normalized men having feelings other than anger. And as you say, Mila, from a young age, and normalize men having emotionally open conversations and friendships and spaces where they can work through those emotions without having to put on the man face, which then leads to situations that can escalate. And I don't think that's necessarily the cause of rapists or whatever, but I do think that it would help all parts of our society, probably.
It's been really interesting seeing these neoliberals coming in to the UK recently, and it very much harking back to Margaret Thatcher and this idea of there is no society, there is no community.
We believe there should be individuals. We're all unequal. No one, thank heavens, is quite like anyone else, however much the socialists may pretend otherwise. And we believe that everyone has the right to be unequal, but to us, every human being is equally important.
And this very strong feeling of privatization and business being the priority and everything else being secondary. And one of the interesting things I think I've noticed from, interestingly, quite a bit from Brazil, but more from Italy, is this sort of social, cultural construct where you feel like you're part of a community. And there is, once you embed yourself in, everyone starts to get to know you. And actually it makes crime a lot harder because it's oh, I saw Johnny running off with the tire or little Janie running off with the ice cream. Obviously, the word can get around quite quickly and it's right, go and speak to what's name's parents and we can resolve this quite quickly. And therefore, in theory, it should make crime quite difficult. One of the interesting things I also thought of, and something that Mila brought up, that when you report an assault issue or an issue between two partners, two married partners, the police generally don't seem to want to know. And it sounds like what's taken place with the rapists being on TV and the crowd coming outside sounds like something that might be a catalyst for that change. Seems like society needs to have that incident to happen. I think we mentioned Iran earlier as well, didn't we? I think there was some clip of a woman being assaulted in Iran recently, and then the crowd just bundled in and just took out the guy. It's just like, wow, that's a shift. So I do wonder if things like have to get to a point where people say enough is enough for that change to happen. And then I've got a final point. Interestingly, it's also stereotyping of women. I studied in depth Jack the Ripper and what he did to the women who were walking the streets. Also the stereotyping that the police did, because they assumed that women out late at night must be bad or must be up to no good. But interestingly, the Yorkshire Ripper, almost identical about 100 years later, 1970s to early 80s. Same thing happened. The police assumed that the women being attacked were all sex workers. And because of that, because they assumed that, the exact same thing as what happened in the 1880s, it meant that the police didn't pick up on the killer quicker because they assumed if it happened at daylight, it was someone else. Because, you know, their killer, the serial killer, could only attack sex workers. That's 100 years and no societal change. Then brings back to your point about education being so important. So going back to the segue, the economy seems to be based on that at the moment, Max. I'm going to throw it to you, Max, because I want you to get into this. It looks like they're just interested in business and not community and society.
Yeah, it is like that. It's all this return to Thatcherism, the individual, not society. And we saw it with the tax cuts. The tax cuts are for the richest in society, but not for society itself. Instead, what happened was they're still talking about, well, we may increase universal credit, or we're talking about it. We'll have a think on it. And there was an interesting interview with, I think it was the Paymaster General, who was basically saying, well, yeah, we didn't have we can't give you the data now, or we can't give you the information now because we haven't costed it. And then he was challenged on, well, you didn't have the tax cuts for the rich costed it, or the elimination of the banker's bonus cap costed it. And his response was, yeah, but that's giving money to, like, if we're giving money to people on universal credit, then we need to cost that, but we don't if it's to the richest in society, because these people are creating something. But it comes back to this creating two classes. It's not even working class, upper class, middle class. No, it's just there is one class at the top and everyone else. And everyone else can just go to hell. And it's quite frightening the rhetoric that you're starting to hear from Liz Truss and the complete indifference to people who are struggling. The next crisis is interest rates, with mortgages. And there doesn't seem to be a plan to help people out. And, you know, generally people will say, well, if you have a mortgage, you're probably middle class. And yes, but that's going to affect also people who are renting, because if people lose their homes, if they're second homes, if they lose, what will they do? They'll sell them, and then they'll kick out anyone who's renting. And where do they go? There's no social housing available. People are going to be homeless, but there's no thinking about that from government. There's no plan to deal with this. It's all, yeah, we'll deal with it when it happens. That's all I want to say. Yeah. Sorry, Zoe, go ahead.
I really think that it ties in with what we were saying before, though, right? Because when homelessness increases, which happens in times like these, which are being manipulated to happen by the government, and when, you know, other social problems increase, like addiction issues, you know, this is what happens when the economy tanks, when people are forced out of their homes. That's what happens. And then that results in a feeling on the street of being far less secure, right?
Yeah.
And of not having a community where you can walk down the street. And what has happened, exactly as you've been saying, but like, you know, it's just been ramped up to like 13 this last week. But this is actually like the agenda that the Tories have been pursuing for 12 years. They've been cutting away from things that support our communities. And now our communities don't have those, like young people don't have youth groups and community centers or anything to do where they can build up that trust within like a close-knit society, and we can build up as a feeling of being safe and looking out for one another as neighbors. We're being left basically to fend for ourselves. And the idea finally that like people on benefits don't create anything is just, it's so short-sighted. Like how many amazing musicians and artists have we had in this country who literally were subsidized by the state, where the fact that they spent, you know, their years coming out of like school and developing their craft on benefits. Like this is actually an investment into people who haven't worked out exactly what they're going to do just yet, as well as being obviously a lifeline to so many people who need this, you know, top up from low wages or who can't work for whatever reason. It's also actually like a fund into creativity for young people who don't have a trust fund.
They're very much subsidising business, aren't they? And I've always pointed to Shakespeare. He must have brought in trillions to the UK economy, and an artist. Can you name another company for 300 years that's brought in that level of income to the UK? No,
Oasis, they were all on the dole. Oasis were all on the dole while they were writing, you know, Definitely Maybe. And like that never could have happened if there was like the kind of stringent benefits checks that we have now. And I know that it seems spurious because benefits should obviously be for, you know, like we need to think about like people with disabilities, people with, you know, but like, it also should just be something that people can rely on. And that we could see that as a benefit, like as a greater benefit for society of having people who aren't screwed as soon as they're out of this kind of work.
I'm a huge advocate for a UBI, so a UBI, universal basic income, where we could give people, you know, the money to survive, the money to live, and then they would be free to you know, to follow their dreams, which is unfortunately not possible at the moment because so many people, you know, with universal credit they're not able to, in some cases, survive, never mind follow their dreams. Sorry, Mila, can we bring you in on this as well?
I had like two things that I was thinking about. First one is what Alex and Zoe said. When a particular event happens, so we're going a bit off topic from benefits and so on. When a particular event like arises, whatever it is, whether it's a suicide, then we only focus on mental health issues. When the glacier melts, we only focus on climate change. When Pakistani floods happen, we only focus on that, and so on. But we never truly, I think the media never truly shows what's happening before and after that. It's usually that event, and that I think could be linked to economy as well, with the media just being media, if I can say it. And the second thing is that what I wanted to ask Zoe is about benefits, and what about refugees? How would they feel in a country like this? As an advocate for refugees as well, and as Serbia is in such a great geographical position for them to migrate, as we are a non-EU country and we don't have such policies as EU country do, but we are also surrounded by other EU countries. They usually stay longer in Serbia than they pass through Greece or any other country. That's what I was about to ask you about benefits, any for them, maybe during COVID, maybe right now when everything is collapsing. You know better.
Well, you know how to get me talking, Mila, you really do. Oh, Zoe, won't you tell us about the migrants? Listen, one thing that is really important to emphasize is that migrants, I'm not talking specifically about refugees here, migrants who come here to work, study, etc., are banned from accessing almost all benefits until they obtain permanent residence, which usually takes about 10 years. So if you're a migrant who comes and works in one of the jobs that, as Alex said, like we're subsidizing that big business to pay poverty wages, and British citizens who work for that company get such low wages that they also can sign on and get benefits as well to top up their wages, and you're a migrant working for that company, you just have to deal with the lower wages. You do not get the option to sign on for universal credit. It's just not something that's available to you. So it's just a complete injustice. Obviously, these people are contributing to our society in every way, and they have the same needs as anybody else. And also, it's totally counterproductive from, you know, the perspective of public finances, because if you put people in a situation where they can't reach out for help when they need it, they end up getting into debt and getting into crisis. And guess what? That becomes a lot more expensive for the state than just helping out somebody when they're going through, you know, a difficult time when they can reach out for certain benefits that would be appropriate. So it's a completely disastrous policy. It's called no recourse to public funds, and almost all migrants have it. And then refugees, they're in a whole different category, because until they're recognized and their status is formalized, they can't even work. And so then they are given
Zoe, sorry, just for people who are listening.
Could go on forever.
No, I just wanted to ask you, because this is something that's brought up a lot. Why are refugees not allowed to work? Is it because in some other countries they are permitted to work? What is the thinking behind the British government's decision? No, these people are, you know, they complain about, you know, that you have the Farages and others who are saying like, oh, look at them, they're living off the state, they're living in hotels, but you know, they have to live in this way because they're not allowed to work. Why are they not permitted to be employed? What is the reasoning behind that?
The real reason is that, and I'm not sure exactly, to be honest, the year when the limitations on right to work came on, but every single other like limitation on the rights of asylum seekers is the same story. At one point, the previous Suella Braverman, the previous Priti Patel, the previous Theresa May, the previous Home Secretary said, look at all these migrants, they're coming here because they have the right to work. So we will take away their right to work, and migrants, they won't want to come here anymore, and we'll be tough and we'll solve the problem. And it's just a pull factor because they have X. And then they take away X, and guess what? That wasn't it. Amazingly, they're not coming here to work. They're not coming here for benefits. Refugees come here for protection, and they come here because they have connections to this country. That's why. And those are things that we can't take away, and we shouldn't want to, because the fact that the UK is a safe and prosperous country is actually a great thing for all of us.
Do you think a Labour government could bring it back?
I think it's one of the things that we're quite likely to win with the Labour government. And probably after 6 months, they'll give asylum seekers the right to work. It will be, and you know what, like that would be an amazingly brilliant thing. But you know what would be way better than that would be if asylum seekers weren't waiting for longer than 6 months to get their papers in order. And then it wouldn't matter, you know? It only matters that people can't work because they're stuck in the system for years, actually, at the moment, right? So obviously I support giving asylum seekers the right to work. But if you could actually fix the problem, like put the resources into getting fast and fair decisions made on people's claims, then the fact that they didn't have the right to work wouldn't really matter, because it would take a couple of months and then they'd be through and start rebuilding their lives. And that would actually be way better and take, unfortunately, some much more radical changes. And I hope we can convince the next Labour government to do that. But you know, we'll see how it goes.
No comment on the shadow secretary.
Oh, Rachel Reeves.
Yeah, that didn't come out great, did it? Mila, what are your thoughts on the refugee and migration situation taking place within the refugee situation taking place in the UK?
Oh my God! So I would also tie it back into the talk about and the topic of just geographical position. UK is an island, and refugees have such a long way to get to the UK. And then when they do come there, to the coasts or anywhere else, they would face pushbacks, or they would face violence, or they would just say, oh, you know what, we are deporting you back to the country where you were prosecuted, where you were, you know, thrown out literally, where you know, are harmed and so on. So it's not just the UK, but like a lot of countries. I'm not a lawyer, I don't know much about it, but I know the basis of refugee law and humanitarian law and human rights. And pushbacks are not really, if I can say, legal. It's like you have to let people in, but they just keep doing it and just sending back people home. Like, I can just put myself into their shoes and be like, okay, listen, if I expressed my political opinion in Iran, or if I was prosecuted by police in Iran, if we go back now to the previous topic, or back in Serbia, I would run away. I would try and seek an asylum anywhere else, but not at the place I was. and then I would face pushback, or okay, you have to wait in, let's say, detention center for what, 6 months? That's not like, those are like breaches of human rights law. It's like, my human right is to be, let's say, free and not detained in a detention center or asylum center or whatever you want to call it for like 6+ months. So I could go on like this forever, but it's
and I could listen forever.
I guess you made a perfect episode. I guess you made the perfect episode of like two of us meeting here. I feel the connection.
Definitely.
We do put a little bit of thought into who we stick together.
One of the things I've been screaming at the screen for some time over the issue of refugees is this issue of, it was from a few months ago, and Zoe knows it pretty well, this focus on the smugglers. And, you know, the reason the smugglers exist, of course, is because there isn't a safe channel for people to come in. And I've been screaming and wishing that a journalist would say something like, well, why don't we just send a ferry, an empty ferry to Calais and pick up all the people, and then we eliminate completely the people smugglers, because who's going to pay 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 euros to cross the channel if you can cross it for free in a heated ferry boat?
Heated and safe, let's say.
And safe, yes, with a buffet or something like that. Like, who's going to pay thousands of euros in a dodgy boat to cross the channel in the middle of winter or in the rough seas? No one's going to do that. So why doesn't the British government eliminate completely this trade by sending ferries over to pick people up? Zoe, what do you want to say about that?
Oh my, I can't answer that. I remain stuck on the same question. Why, if you don't want them to be crossing like this? See, this is the thing. Because when people say, how do we stop the boats? They don't mean, how do we stop the boats? How do we stop the boats? We do exactly what you just said. We give people a safe way to cross. But people don't mean, how do we stop the boats? How do we stop the boats sounds humanitarian. It sounds like you care. But what you really mean is, how do we just create a situation where none of these refugees are our problem at all? And just because, exactly as Mila was referring to, geographical location, not our problem. It's all on France. And obviously, as we know, the problem with that is that the entire concept of refugee protection relies on international solidarity. And it relies on the fact that, frankly, actually, countries, you know, neighboring conflict zones are required to host the vast majority of refugees, but also it requires states like the UK, like France, like Germany, Italy, to accept people when they arrive, and to process their claims, and to offer them a place to live if it would be dangerous to send them back. And if one of us stops playing ball, then it can all crumble.
Yeah. It's I'm going to put my history cap on now for that, because that's quite interesting.
Here we go.
So, yeah, because I'm going to burn some of the right-wing newspapers in Britain, because they're the ones that are causing, in my opinion, a lot of these problems. I put on my
Jacob Rees-Mogg cap.
Oh, ho, ho! All hail the hat.
My Jacob Rees-Mogg cap. Sorry, Alex.
No.
I ruined your moment.
So the news outlets, the Daily Mail and a few others have been releasing stories about the negativity of immigration and refugees for years, and they've changed the language. But the language hasn't changed since the 1900s. We've seen it since the 1900s, them saying the same stuff. They were lambasting the Jews when they were coming over in the 1930s, escaping persecution in Germany. claiming that the ports were all flooded with Jewish people. And interestingly, on your job point, 500 doctors are available at present, to my knowledge, inside the camps, and they can't get work, and we've got a shortage of doctors. You work that one out. Crime in 2001 went down when the refugee numbers went up. Why was that not reported in the news? Isn't that interesting? It almost feels like the papers have just been drip feeding this crap for so long that people have started to buy into it more and more. And then when they started finding stories to prove it, and the government started backing it because of Brexit, there's your segue, the papers could come out and go, we're the soothsayers, see, we were right all along. And yet, there's no element of like approaching them and saying, I don't think there's a capacity within certain right-wing newspapers to approach them and go, we feel, here's a great news story about refugees. Here's a great news story about migrants. Here's a great tale about a migrant who's come in and changed something and improved the UK. You're not going to hear that because they don't think it'll sell newspapers, and it probably doesn't work with their ideological stance on all of this. And a final thing, on the Ukrainian refugees, the British really, really struggled on that. You know, anyone heard of the Nansen passports from 1918? Nansen's a Norwegian. He's really famous in Norway. And Nansen managed to sort out after World War I a complete cacophony of crap that had taken place in Eastern Europe and within Germany, and managed to transport people to different parts of Europe to sort out the refugee problem that was taking place. Do you know, would anyone like to guess, I'm going to put a clock on now, would anyone like to guess how much it cost to give them a Nansen passport?
You love your quizzes. I know the Nansen passport, but I don't know how much it cost.
Pound?
Yes!
Ah, okay.
Oh my gosh!
I knew it, see?
£1 per person. It's nothing. And we couldn't organise that here in modern times, even though someone had actually set it up to show you how to do it effectively for £1 per person, and that included transportation and the passport. So you're just like, there isn't an appetite for it, as you said. Would anyone else like to say anything quickly? Because we're out. Me. Go on, Mila.
I would like just to add to Nansen thing. There are Nansen awards giving out to people who are advocating for refugees and doing their work and so on. And so last year there was one Serbian guy, Nikola Kovacevic, who, oh, God bless him, he is the best, let me tell you. And I got into work with refugees through like his podcast and everything that I saw. But then I go on to UNHCR profile this year, and there is Angela Merkel. How do you pronounce it in?
What would that be in German, Angela?
It's Angela.
What?
My name is Angela.
No, don't correct me. I'm in charge now. Germany sucks. Your war failed. Prepare to go to war.
English. Merkel?
Angela Merkel.
Merkel, yes. So it's like, and then there is her, but then I think about, but wait, it's Germany, France, even Austria and other EU countries who are usually not accepting refugees and who are usually so far away from the refugees, and then she's the one getting the award. And I'm like, wait, what? It's like, how do you do that? Like, is it because she is the person with authority? Is she, what's happening there?
It's because the bar that you have to cross over is in hell. The bar is so low. The bar is so low.
And on that low note, we're going to have to say goodbye. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
See you next time.
Who would you have come and save you from drowning? Zoe.
Nikola Kovacevic.
I love how she's ready for it.
Zoe, who would you like to have come save you from drowning? Vladimir Putin or Marie Le Pen?
Marie Le Pen. I tell you why. Because she thinks she hates migrants. She thinks she'd let them drown. But if she was actually watching someone drown, nobody would let someone drown in front of them. And so everybody who thinks that they're so tough and that they hate migrants are just highly unimaginative idiots. And she's one of them. And she would save my life and give me mouth to mouth. And then we'd make out on the beach and it'd be gorgeous. Although
Gotta go. Who would you have save you from drowning? Jacob Rees-Mogg or Meloni?
It'd be probably Meloni, because a little bit like what Zoe was saying, I don't believe Jacob Rees-Mogg has a soul. So Jacob Rees-Mogg would step over me and look and try and pick up some antique item and save that over me. So if there was a burning building, so I don't think Meloni would, but you know the odds are a little bit more in my favor with Meloni than with Jacob Rees-Mogg. And Alex, you're not going to escape this. So Alex, who would? Zoe, can you think of two? I can't think of two.
Two horrific people.
Yes, who? And then Alex has to decide.
How about you get the choice? You get the choice that lovely small minority of Tory members got. So who's going to save you from burning building? Liz Truss or Rishi Sunak?
Liz Truss will get lost.
Yeah, but Rishi Sunak probably couldn't reach up to find you.
Oh, you beat me to that answer. I think I'd have a better chance with Rishi Sunak. So your choice, Mila, for drowning is Boris Johnson or Liz Truss?
Can I say my first answer, or can I refer to Putin, or what can I do with it? So okay, quick answer. If I had like crowd watching me drown, and there were all of the people you just mentioned, if I think about it in like international relations and foreign affairs thing, I think Putin will be the one who would save me. But if we think about current happenings and everything, I honestly don't know. Maybe some of you, because I don't know if anyone would help me. They would just be like, you go down. So it will be on you, I guess. So who would save me? Zoe, I think it will be you. After
this conversation, I couldn't let you drown.
Thank you. But Alex, I'm sure you could pick me up as well. Max, I'm sorry, I don't really know you, so I guess you would help as well.
I can't swim, so I wouldn't be any help at all. You'd have to save me. I'd jump in, and then you'd have to push me out.
I'd have to think of a sentence each for a different accent. So I was gonna ask Max to do a sentence in French, Mila to put on her best English accent, and Zoe to put on her best Irish accent.
Alexander accent.
We can do that next time.
No, I'm going to get so cancelled. I'm going to say something awful. What accent do you got to do? I can say Spice Girls in a Scottish accent.
Oh,
because you said, okay, Space Ghettos. Because you just say Space Ghettos.
Space Ghettos.
Space Ghettos. That's the only accenting I'm prepared to do, because I'm really bad at
it. Okay, it was good. Max, I'm gonna ask you to order a croissant in your best French accent.
In French accent, not in French, because I don't speak French.
Not in French.
May I have a croissant, please?
No. You have to say may have croissant.
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 S'il vous plaît. Un croissant, s'il vous plaît. Okay, I tried.
And Mila, I would like a cup of tea in your best English accent.
All right, Alex. I guess I guess you do deserve a cup of tea, but I guess like I have to do it some other time. Like I'm pretty busy right now. I'm also super grateful that you came up with this, as I've been practicing.
It's very good. You definitely win.
I thought we are all polite here.
I've seen both of your channels.
Well,
I've met, I know both of you personally. Don't try and pull that. I know.
Sorry.
Zoe, you've lived abroad, haven't you? Just to clarify.
Yeah. I've lived in Greece twice and never made it stick.
That means all of us are immigrants at some point.
Expats.
Oh no.
No.
How the hell do they get away with that shit? It's like, fucking hell, being British means that you're superior to the world? I don't get it.
I thought you were a history teacher.
Right. I was going to be nice.